we've started to talk about the social TV element, and let's sort of explore that a little bit more. How is social TV going to change our experience with TV, and then how does that impact on brands and advertisers and how they use the medium? Anybody?
I'll go first.
Go on, Mark.
We've seen a bit of this, and we talk about the traditional model and I suppose the established model, so I say, and looking at free-to-air television, it's not often you hear a subscription TV executive talk about free-to-air in a good light, but I will briefly. The cricket, the Channel 9 cricket this year, I think you saw the social TV app they had up running. Vodafone got on board as a brand, so it became the Vodafone viewer's choice. And I mean, when you're watching kind of live sport and being a sports fan, you're engaging in that content almost as much as you're at the ground. You're swearing at it a little bit. You're disappointed with the decisions. Was it a run out? Was it an LBW? And having the ability to sit on your smartphone or your tablet device and have your view, and that view be relayed onto the screen at real time, I think was a real step forward for the industry. And that, for me, started to show what was capable of social TV. And I think probably by the end of this year, social TV will have become mainstream, not only on free-to-air television, but certainly across the television industry.
Yeah, I think if you look at the US, they're probably they've taken that to the next level. Even the large free-to-airs in the US, they look at their social TV interaction. It's not just sort of the interaction that drives the main screen viewing and what happens in the case of the cricket. You saw something on the screen. It's what happens on their tablet device in relation to that show. Yeah. And that can be sort of slightly more dispersed in terms of the outcomes, as opposed to just the the LBW wasn't valid or not. Yeah. And so I think that ability to interact with the show on multiple levels is what you're seeing a lot in the US now. And clearly the issue of what are my friends doing, what are my friends watching, what brands do they support, and that whole level. And that's where I think brand interaction becomes very powerful.
Yeah.
I think I guess social TV is in my mind is going to do a few things. The one undeniable thing it's already doing is helping aggregate audiences quickly. So if you saw first episode of the first Underbelly, loved it, you'd go to work the next day, talk about it, and your friends might pick it up at episode 2, or if there was a rerun. What social TV is now doing is that's happening instantaneous. I think Hunger Games last week, it opened in Australia to $9 million of revenue, 155 million in the US, the largest single opening for a non-sequel for a movie about kids killing each other. But that was the social network buzz that brought the audience to the place. So that it's happening. What people do when they're there and how much appetite they have for conversation, either on screen or just with their friends. I think there's going to be a lot of right answers. I think sports has a right answer. I don't know if did you guys ever have Mystery Science Theater 2000 as a TV show? It's an old show, but what it did is it just took
not many people watched it.
It just took really bad monster movies or things from the 70s, and it just had some robots sitting in the front row of a movie theater, and you'd see the back of their head, and they just commentate. But the commentary on the bad show was actually quite fun. So I think there's a lot of programs that actually lend themselves to people having fun, interacting competitively, or it's close or what have you. How much appetite they have to do that with who, for which shows, how often, I think the jury's out.
Yeah, great.
And I don't know the answer, and I think we're going to try to experiment to find the
I guess
spot.
there's certain types of program that lends itself better to that experience than others.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think people have talked a lot about sort of interacting with programs as they go out live, and I think that Channel 9 came and talked to us the other week, and they kind of said that it's actually quite difficult to do that with a lot of their programming. I mean, sport is something that does go out live and people watch it in that way, but a lot of shows, even the reality stuff, that isn't going out live. Sort of Rob Norman from Group M in the US was over recently, and he was talking about how certain shows, whether it's things like first runs of Glee, would see sort of massive spikes in traffic and people talking about those shows. And so I think he was really interested in how can advertisers be active in that space around that brand and that show when there are sort of events and broadcasts that see that massive spike in people talking about the content.
Yeah, I think what it's really pushes the challenge back to the broadcaster and ultimately the host and presenter of some of these shows to be able to kind of link back to the feedback they're getting from their audience immediately and comment on it. So we're talking before about one-to-one. You really feel like you're fully involved in that content. So the art and the skill of some of these presenters and commentators has probably got to go up a notch.
Absolutely.
But also I think there'll be less and less of the single show that suits the needs of everyone, the mega show, the mega sporting event, and far more the curve will fall away to being shows with small audiences that appeal to a very tight audience. Now, in the traditional world, the advertisers would have avoided that, and there was no way to really do that well. I think the one thing we'll be able to see is advertisers being able to really target niche audiences that are truly effective in terms of moving either brand loyalty or purchase, and that flies in the face of the large show when you just stick one ad and you hope for the best. So I think that opportunity and the content will be delivered, as we mentioned, through different mechanisms and different streams, and advertisers will be forced and both enjoy the move to finding the key audience, and it won't necessarily be the same model. There'll still be some of the same model, but it'll be less.
Right.
And I think what you lose in mass audience, you get back in engagement and targeting. So the targeting, absolutely. But if you use the internet, celebrity gossip, you can go anywhere. But Perez Hilton's got a niche because he curates and finds the thing and the tonality. Mia Freeman here has done a great job with Mamma Mia to curate. I guess coming from a magazine background, it's a lot of stuff out there. We're all time poor. If you can curate the content, attract the right audience, and engage them, now you've really got people's attention. And you'd pay the same money to reach 1/10 of the audience if you knew you can get that extra level of engagement.
Yeah.
And that's the real opportunity for advertisers. It's not about
we saw
numbers.
A couple of weeks ago, we were in the US for a Montgomery conference, and someone from one of the larger video network companies was talking about this whole issue of higher engagement and reach, and through a bunch of testing, they found that by advertisers moving 15% of their free-to-air, their cable TV, if you will, ad dollars across to online video, they increased reach. So there was a sweet spot at 15% move. Any more than that, and you saw the reach fall back again. Any less than that, you've had underperformance. So there is a proportion that moves across and gets you that enhanced engagement and reach, and then it moves itself forward.
So should the free-to-air broadcasters be worried? I mean, this is changing the landscape, changing the dynamic.
I think of course they should be worried. I think the point that you made there about targeted, we've been talking probably at MCM for the past 12 months about targeted being the new premium. And I'll be fascinated to get Jonathan's views on this, me being a seller and him being a buyer, because advertising often gets kind of tainted as the enemy. But let's be honest, the advertising revenue has produced some of the best content that we've all loved to watch over the past 5 or 10 years. So I agree, and we're firmly setting ourselves up as targeted being the new premium moving forward. Advertising clients have, number one, got to see the accountability in their data to justify that premium. But if we're going to move down that model, if we still want to really enjoy kind of great content, the premium has got to come with that. So how will that be digested, Jonathan?
So I think that when we're buying advertising, even if it's in a digital space on a CPM basis, we're actually sort of trying to get reach out of that. So we're not actually buying our end goal, and you could pay a higher price or a lower price, and depending on the mix of advertising, you'll end up with a better result. So if your targeting is better, and if there's a premium on it, but what it actually means is that you reach more of the people you're trying to reach the right amount, then absolutely you'll pay that upfront premium because you're making a saving on what you're trying to deliver at the back end.